time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Most people head out on a trail expecting exercise, fresh air, and a little peace and quiet. Emily Sutherland went out for a run and ended up fighting through an encounter that could have had a much different ending. Tonight, we're discussing the case, examining what happened, and talking about the lessons learned that everyone can learn from this situation. Joining me tonight is Eric Scott, a military veteran, use of force expert, defensive tactics instructor, and experienced law enforcement trainer. Eric has spent years teaching people how to recognize danger and respond when seconds matter. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Eric, what drew your attention to this case?
I mean, it's a local case here in North Carolina, and unfortunately, this kind of thing happens to folks, and I'm glad that nothing crazy as far as injuries go happened to this young lady, and I think it gives a very good example that we can learn from, not to disparage her at all or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that we can learn from to help other people be safe.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I was doing a show just a couple weeks ago about the Fleming's case where Preston Peterson was finally arrested for her murder. And this was a case again where it was a 19-year-old female that had been abducted and murdered. And after the show, I had some people reach out to me and they asked me, well, what can I do to protect myself? And what are some recommendations that you have that I carry? And so I thought about you because I know this is kind of your space. You've spent a lot of time in martial arts. You've been in the military. You've been in law enforcement. And you've had a training role in all of this. So
I've been a hiker.
You have. You've done some. What was the hike that you did around Europe?
Yeah, I walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain.
Okay, so, and how far was that?
It's like 500 kilometers, I guess, or 800 kilometers,
so, yeah.
500 miles, something like that. So it's from a little bit into France through Santiago, Spain. So you're walking across the northern third of Spain, and then kicked out to the beach and walked up the coast for a couple days and came back.
Okay, so 500 miles, I think we can qualify you as a proficient hiker. You know what you're actually talking about when it comes to these types of situations. So in Emily's case, we know that she was going for a 13-mile run, which is relatively short considering the type of things that you have done. I know that she's very experienced in being in that area. She talked about her familiarity with it. She spends her time having an Instagram account where she takes these pictures of herself in nature this is around Asheville, North Carolina, which is a beautiful place. But again, she's got experience in this area. And if you want to follow her, it's Emily Sutherland is her name. And it's M. Hiken is her Instagram name. But I wanted to point that out because it's not like this is new to her. And it's not like she didn't know where she was or she was not an experienced person. And this really came at a convenient time as far as when the attack happened, because it happened towards the end of her run and it happened in an area where people heard her. What's been reported is that after the run, she was more or less going towards her car when she sees this gray Dodge Charger that was following her. From your perspective, when you are, or when people too are out and about, are those the type of things that you're looking for, or what are your initial observations when you're doing these hikes, or what should your observations be?
So first of all, you're not going to catch me running 13 miles anytime soon. Hiking is walking, but being out there is just the same, I guess. So I think the first thing that folks need to understand and at least recognize is that there's a whole other side to society that most people, they just don't see. You as a law enforcement officer, I'm sure you've had experiences where a friend calls you, or you come home and see your wife and they say, man, I saw a traffic stop, but there were 3 police officers there, and that's the craziest thing ever. And it's a good thing that folks don't see that ugly part of society, but there is a part of society where bad guys do bad things to folks. And it's not like a thing that you have to be scared of, but you should at least understand that it's there so that you can take steps to prevent any kind of person crimes to best of your ability.
And that's where I wanted to go next, because the guy ends up stopping and he gets out of her car and he's yelling something to her, and she does not know what he's saying. She thinks that maybe he's, I think what you were saying before is people don't think about the worst case scenario. And for her, she was thinking, oh, maybe he's telling me about a bear or an animal in the area.
Yeah, I think reading one of the stories where she gave an interview, she said she saw the vehicle. It looked like he was looking for a parking space, and it may have followed her for up to a mile. He's ranting and raving. She recognized something was off about this. She was able to see that something's off about this guy, regardless of what he was saying, whether he was talking about a bear or talking about space aliens. I don't know. But it helps to see things as potential survival situations before they happen. So in the hiking world, that might mean you talk to some folks who have gone through a specific section of a hike, and they say there are not many water points between this place and this place. So instead of just carrying the same amount of water you always carry, you might plus up your water and hike that section with more water, understanding that you could have a shortage in that area. So understanding that in a short-term situation like this, where she sees this and recognizes something's off, but anyway, you look at it and you're going to say, this is weird. And you don't have to go to the worst case scenario ever. And that's kind of a thing that a lot of cops do, because they have to war game stuff all the time. And that's not something that your everyday person is used to doing. And I don't want folks to feel like they need to be scared, but you could at least recognize this is different from what I normally see in this area, and maybe I need to pay more attention. And now this guy pops out and is looking at you and talking to you. You don't know this person. You start setting boundaries and taking measures to protect yourself, even if it's something as basic as turn around going the other way, or going wide, or waving to a stranger and calling them a name like you know them already, or just screaming help, or you can't get in trouble for asking for help. I mean, better safe than sorry.
And that's some good advice, because it's kind of like, how do you prevent, or how do you win a gunfight? You don't get in the gunfight. You avoid it and take steps to not be in it. Or how do you not get robbed? You stay away from shady places, right? Like, it's just kind of the same thing of, when you recognize that danger, you're not going to go near that danger. And I think that was a good point of, maybe that's time to change directions and see how that person reacts. Or maybe you're pulling out that cell phone even and just getting that ready in case things escalate. And in this situation, it does escalate. The guy's name was Dillon James Curtis. He ends up getting out of his car and he's yelling a bunch of gibberish, but some of it is that he's going to knock her out and drag her into the woods. So we've gone from something that looks suspicious, we don't know what it is, to an actual threat. What's going through your mind when you hear something like that?
I mean, yeah, it's disturbing because I have daughters, you know, and I want them to not be afraid of going out and doing the things that they want to do. And I want them to be able to recognize things that are off about people and handle those issues before they turn into issues. But, you know, to your point, there are, even if it's just your cell phone or maybe your smartwatch, there are apps and other devices where you can hit a quick button that sends an SOS to a friend, somebody who knows where you are and what you're doing, or just straight to 911. And at the moment that you recognize that this person is not somebody you want to be hanging out with, we need to be taking steps to break contact. And it sounds like, I guess, another interview that I read of hers, she was saying that he was calling her different people's names and stuff.
Right.
So he could have been, for sure, dealing with some kind of mental health crisis, or he had something in his bloodstream that, you know, is not your regular run-of-the-mill person that's parking at the trailhead and going for a run. So,
yeah, and for those that are listening, he's a white male with, it looks like, really unkept appearance. You know, his hair is very raggedy. I know that he was local to the area. He had an 828 tattoo on him, which is the area code for Asheville and that surrounding area. But right, you've got this guy that is obviously crazy and yelling a bunch of gibberish, and he's an actual threat. And I know in Emily's case, she normally carries mace with her. She's reported that, and that day she didn't have it on her. With that, is there other items that you would recommend? Is a civilian mace, is that worth anything? Have you been sprayed by it? I haven't. I've just been hit with the real stuff.
I mean, I think pepper spray sucks either way you cut it. You know, and something's better than nothing. If we can manage distance outside of pepper spray range, you know, that can only spray so far. If you're able to manage distance outside that range, then that's better than having to be able to, or, you know, being in that range to use pepper spray, right? So recognizing this is a problem and setting up that invisible force field of, I'm not going anywhere closer. This is my boundary that I've drawn a line in the sand, metaphorically. You know, if we get into that pepper spray range, the thing that I would encourage people to do, if that's something that you want to start carrying, is practice with it. And you don't have to practice with the real pepper spray. There are companies that sell inert pepper spray, so that the first time you activate that pepper spray is not in an emergency situation. You know, you've practiced on a tree with inert pepper spray. It's not going to burn you or harm anything, you know, or a piece of paper. So you can practice taking that from whatever place that you keep it, in your runner's vest or on your in your pocket or belt line or wherever you're carrying that, you know. But regardless of what you carry, you need to train with it. And that's one of those things where it's an easy thing for an instructor to say, hey, you should go train, you need more training, you need more training. And most folks aren't gonna really put a lot of time into, you know, martial arts and training just because they're a long distance runner, you know. But something
Right.
small, if you're gonna carry it, if you're gonna carry something, you need to have a trainer for that thing, and you need to be familiar with not only how to use it, but how to draw it and how to put it away.
And I like the point you made about keeping distance, because I do feel that a lot of people's solution would be like, oh, I see so many police departments now that will offer like self-defense classes for women. And I think that one of the points we can look at this is the best case is you don't get anywhere near the guy.
Yeah,
You're not getting within arm reach of him. So you're not even, but I know that sometimes things do escalate and you want to be prepared, but ideally you don't want to be in reach of this guy, right?
Yeah, and the classes are always beneficial, but I can tell you from my own experience going to a bunch of combatives classes, you go to that one course and you are tight right after it. You know everything, you've got everything, you did great on the culmination exercises, and a week later you can't remember what the third technique was that day that they taught. So even when you're taking notes, just the one class
Right.
it's better than nothing. But it's easy to forget that stuff. It's perishable for sure. So of course I'm gonna recommend that everybody go train and get into some kind of self-defense stuff, jiu-jitsu, or any kind of striking art. Anything's better than nothing. But it needs to be a progressive thing, and it needs to be a consistent thing, so that you don't just, I took a self-defense class at the sheriff's department 4 months ago, and now this guy's doing that thing that I think we covered after lunch, and I was falling asleep, and now I can't remember how to defend it, So, I would always recommend training, but I know most people aren't gonna really put that in. I mean, because she's got a whole thing going for her too, the hiking, outdoors, running stuff. That's her thing. That's where she spends her time.
Right.
You bring in martial arts classes, and that's soaking up a lot of time. And you only have so much time to allocate to this hobby and that hobby, and then family, and then school or work or whatever. So I get it. A lot of folks don't really have the time to allocate to consistent training, but something's better than nothing.
Right. And maybe just learning how to use that mace or pepper spray is a lot less time consuming than going to jiu-jitsu 5 days a week or whatever you do currently. I think that in this case, it does work out for her, because she yells for help, and 2 mountain bike riders in the area actually hear her and come to her aid. And that was another perspective that I had in this case, was that you shouldn't just be preparing to help yourself. There may come a point, and especially for, not to be sexist, but men out there, that you may be able to have that weapon system on you, or the ability to control someone, and you may have to use those skills to help someone else, like Emily in this case.
Yeah. In 2015, maybe 2014, that kind of area between 2014 and 2015 on the Camino, there had been some high profile disappearances from hikers. And there was a specific stretch of the Camino that a couple of these hikers had gone missing from. I happened to be in a town in that stretch. I got into the hostel, washed my clothes, and went down to the little cafe to use the internet. And there was a group of teenage girls. They were absolutely Americans. I mean, you can definitely tell who's who in a foreign country. But yeah, it was a group of teenage American girls, and they're loud and doing their thing and having a good time. I'm minding my business, checking emails and stuff. And there's these 2 guys at the bar who they were looking at the girls and chatting with each other, and looking at the girls and chatting with each other. And they were obviously making a plan about something, and it's a small place, so it was easy to look at them. I understand that those girls didn't see them because they're having a great time. But those guys walked over and they started talking to these girls, and they started to divide them. You know, they were trying to divide their attention and split them up. So, you know, I recognized this, and the girls, they were obviously uncomfortable. They obviously didn't want to talk to these, you know, adults, older adult guys. They're just kids, you know, in a foreign country, and they didn't know how to set boundaries and separate themselves from that situation. But realistically, they were getting separated from each other. These guys were trying to find somebody that they could separate off of this group. You know, and I recognized in this, it's not one of those situations where you get to step in and punch somebody in the mouth. It's not one of those type of bars. But, you know, seeing this, I tried my best Spanish to tell these guys, hey, you know, they don't want to talk to you. And he tried to, the main guy tried to blow me off, you know, and then I tried to be more accommodating. Hey, if you want to come have a drink with me, come on over here. He was still not wanting to hear it. He looked at his buddy. They were still working on their plan to split these girls up, you know. And then I was a little more direct and used English instead of Spanish. My Spanish is not so good, but I can be a little more firm in English. And I told him that he needed to buzz off. His buddy got the drift and stepped off and just went straight outside. And this guy's trying to give me the whole, you know, hey, mister, it's not a big deal. But he was a super sleaze. You know, you can get that vibe regardless of anything else. You just get that feeling that this is somebody who's up to no good. So it turned out, you know, he just wasn't going to leave them alone. I ended up just patting him on the back and guiding him towards the door, because even the bartender was trying to break this off. She knew he was up to no good. I put my hand on his back and, you know, pat him on the back. And I was like, hey, bro, you are leaving. You are leaving. That's all there is to it. It didn't turn into a fight or anything, but I guided him out that front door, you know. And then those kids were like, hey, thanks for doing that. We were scared. We were terrified, you know. You got to set boundaries, but you also have to be willing to recognize when somebody's in danger. And you got to use what you got. I definitely did not need to be getting in a fight in a foreign country at that time. You know, nobody really does. But you use what you got. I tried to talk my way out of it, and he wasn't having it. But, you know, I separated them, got them away from those kids, and, you know, they were grateful for it. But if we're rolling up on bikes, we have bicycles. I'm not a bike cop. I have never done any kind of mobile field force bicycle stuff. But I've seen on TV those guys use their bikes as kind of a barrier in between them and folks that they don't want to hug, right? So if you're a biker and you're rolling up on that, you know, maybe she's not getting assaulted yet, but you can tell this person obviously needs help. Splitting them up and just making up a story. Hey, babe, I didn't realize you were this far ahead of us. You know, we need to go to grandma's house, whatever. You know, make something up. If she's getting assaulted, you know, do what you can with what you got. Get 911 on the phone, put them on speakerphone. Bang. And now everything is being recorded, and you can try and verbally de-escalate all you can. But 911 can talk to you, and they can hear what's going on in the background. If you need to help her out physically and you are capable to do that, and you feel like it's a reasonable and justified thing to do at the time, then do that. But I have used 911 on speakerphone before, and it's awesome. You know, you can throw that thing in your pocket and you can still talk and they can still hear, and you guys can work together. They can get resources and police to you, you know. But something as small as that, just, you know, she's tied up dealing with this problem. And again, I don't know exactly the extent of the assault at the time that they rolled up, but, you know, if you can help somebody, man, help somebody. Just treat others as you would want to be treated, and doing the right thing has always worked out for me.
Yeah, and you made a few points I wanted to hit on. One is that not all predators are going to be the crazy guy talking gibberish, telling you that they're going to drag you into the woods. A lot more are going to be just like what you're describing, a guy at a bar, or a guy that maybe he approaches you kindly on that trail. The Gretchen Fleming case that I was referring to earlier, I couldn't remember her first name. It was kind of a similar situation where Preston Pierce approached her in a bar after a friend of hers went to the bathroom, and we believe that he threw something in her drink and had her out the door before her friend came back. And they didn't find her body till years later, and they finally were able to charge him. They actually arrested him in Asheville, North Carolina. So that's a picture of him. But again, like that guy on the outside may be able to approach a young lady and be able to talk his way into something, or at least be able to get close enough where he can slip that thing in her drink or put his hands on her. And so that is something that we need to keep in mind too. Like you were saying, that if it doesn't feel right, maybe that is time to call for your friend, or make up some story, or whatever you have planned for that event. I wanted to get into what happened afterwards. So, like, I know we've gotten a little bit off track, but Emily essentially is approached by this guy. He's yelling gibberish. He's saying that he's going to drag her into the woods after he beats her up. He's actually trying to take her phone from her when she does try to call 911, which was one of his charges.
Yeah.
The odd thing that I read is that an officer responded out to her, and I wasn't able to find what department that he was with, but allegedly he told her just to go to the Asheville Police Department or the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office and report this, which is what she does. She ends up going to the sheriff's office and reporting it, and they initially charged him with a handful of misdemeanors, to include the assault, interfering with 911 communications and whatnot. But luckily, the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office did their homework, and they were looking into this case more closely, and then they were able to pop him with second-degree kidnapping, which is a felony. And so what's scary about this case is we see so many times is offenders like this, that things did not work out the way that Dillon planned in his head. I think he really did want to assault her and drag her into those woods. And because these two gentlemen were there that day, that didn't happen. But if those investigators did not charge him with kidnapping, he would have gotten out on a $5,000 bond.
Yeah. So, if I could just reiterate a point, and I'm not speaking for the law enforcement, the initial law enforcement response, because I don't know what happened, but a lot of times, man, cops get there after the fact, so it would be great if you could recognize things ahead of time and avoid it instead of getting into it. I know that's not always the case because of a lot of factors, but and I don't even know if this suspect here planned it.
And I agree with you that I don't think that this was planned. I think this guy has some mental health issues and was probably driving around and saw her, and this is just speculation, but it sounds like something where he saw her and that triggered something in his behavior to act like this.
Yeah, for sure. And then she recognizes something's off. We have that little voice in the back of our head for a reason, or inside of us, wherever it is, we have that little voice. And you should always listen to that voice, because it's, even though we can't articulate in the moment what about this person is giving me the the vibes, but I really feel like I don't need to be near this person. In the Moscow Rules, it's a book about Cold War spy stuff. One of their rules is to trust your gut. I mean, if they decided that something felt off, even if they couldn't articulate it, they would abort, and that was okay. So you got to trust that little voice.
No, that's a good point. Trusting your instincts and recognizing when the hairs come up on your neck, that you know what, it's okay to go that other route, or to call 911 and say that there's a suspicious person on this trail. Have your phone on speakerphone and do whatever measures you can to, like you were saying before, keep your distance from that person, whether it's running the other direction or whatever you need to do to make that happen. I want to bring up another topic in this case, and that is Iryna's law that ended up benefiting Emily in this case. That was passed in 2025, which is a North Carolina law that took effect, and it established stricter pretrial release conditions for defendants. And one of those is there's now a legal presumption that a defendant charged with a violent offense, which in this case is second-degree kidnapping, should not be released before trial. And the burden falls on the defendant to prove that they are not a danger or flight risk, which in this case, this guy's crazy. He's got a public defender as well, so he's not getting out. I think that is something that we have to recognize as well, is that for a long time, people were able to get out on written promise to appears for violent offenses. And, this is a state-by-state issue. This law was passed in North Carolina. It's not passed in other states. So I think that, not to scare people, but people just need to be aware that when people are arrested, that does not mean that they are locked away and are not getting out.
Yeah, that's like I was saying earlier, there's a whole different side of the world that most people don't ever have to deal with. And that's okay that you don't ever have to deal with it or see it. But you got to understand, if your state has that set up, man, that's the possibility.
All right, so let's talk about, again, some common sense things that you can do while you're hiking. If you could give a short list of things that you think are practical for men and women to carry while they're hiking, I'm not talking about a 5-gallon thing of bear mace.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
So the first thing you're bringing with you is the plan that you already have in place. If you are a social media influencer, maybe not, unless you have such a following that you're going to have groups meet with you on your runs or your hikes, maybe not saying ahead of time, hey, on Thursday at 7 p.m., I'm stepping off on this trail from this trailhead, because the internet's got a bunch of crazy people on it. I mean, you and I are here. So right. You never know. You never know who's setting something up for you. So not giving your plans out to the world ahead of time. You can still go have a great time and do your plan. But, growing up, my dad was in search and recovery. And one of the things he would say all the time was plan your dive and dive your plan. Make a plan ahead of time and stick to that plan. If you get out there and you see something that you want to deviate from your plan for, a side trail or this or that, It's it's better to stick to your plan uh, unless you've planned for deviations. And if you're planning for deviations, or if you're planning on going out alone, it's beneficial to go with a float plan. I've heard it called a float plan. In the military, we call it a GOTWA plan, and it stands for where you're going, others going with you, the time you're going to be gone, what to do if you're not back by that time, and then actions on contact, whether I'm getting contact while I'm out or you guys are getting contact while I'm out. But it's a short little plan that lets folks know where you're going, how long you're going to be gone, and who's going to be with you. And man, if you're not back in that time, where they can be looking. I do the same thing when I go for a run. I'll let my wife know, hey, I'm going for a run. I'm going this far, and I'm doing my normal route around the lake. So she knows if I'm not back in a certain amount of time, that's odd, and she would send people to look at the lake if it was getting way past time. She knows my route. It doesn't have to be on official letterhead or anything like that. Just a quick little, hey, I'm going over here. Maybe a text to your mom or a friend who's in the area. Because let's say we're not even getting attacked by a wild man or a bear or anything like that. But what if you're just out there by yourself and you get hurt? Because stuff happens.
Right.
Just having that plan out there so that somebody knows where you're at and they know where to come looking for you if you don't text them at a certain time, or if you're not back by a certain time, that kind of thing. So plan your dive your plan. If you see something, if you haven't allocated time and planning to deviations from your course, then just come back and do that one later. Make a plan for that one. As far as stuff you're carrying, I am bad about carrying too much. I learned a lot hiking and getting into that and paring my stuff down to what I really need. Most hikers have really dialed their stuff in to what they need. Runners, same way. If you're going to carry something, make sure, as far as weapons, I know you kind of suggest that, but if you're going to carry something for protection, make sure you're doing it within the bounds of your local laws, and make sure you're training with that stuff and that you have trainers and stuff like that. But really just be able to see those situations before they happen so that you can avoid them. Even if it's just a huge dog that is obviously controlling their owner. They're on the leash and their owner is too small to control that dog, and that dog's obviously keyed up about something and is like snapping at other dogs going by and stuff. You can see that from a ways out, and you can recognize that, and you can just go wide. You don't have to pass that person, but recognizing that that's a problem. Same thing as seeing somebody you don't feel like you need to be hanging around. Go wide, cut back the other way, have a contingency set in place. If you can, go with a buddy. Keep your head out of your phone, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like those tips because this was not things that you learned at your local YMCA where you're telling them to, do a Judy chop. This is
break the wrist and walk away.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're not going to put on things that you learned from being on the demo team from Taekwondo, right? These are things that I think all people can do. In the planning part, I mean, that doesn't take any special skill besides just being aware of where you're going and maybe some map reading skills. But I think for the most part, especially people like Emily that are experienced hikers or runners, that's a very practical but useful thing that they can do within a matter of minutes, and it doesn't affect the weight of their pack, And this is not something that you have to spend weeks or months training for. You just have
Yeah.
to develop that plan and stick to it, right?
Yeah, and it could be something as small as having a plan. You know, if you think about hunting, you're going out to your property for hunting. Your wife has been out there maybe a time or two, but she doesn't know exactly where your stand's at. She just knows where the property is and kind of where you park, and she doesn't really like the woods. But if you were to get in trouble, like fall out of your tree stand and break your leg and you're stuck outside of cell range, how's somebody going to find you? You know, your wife knows the general area, but if you have a lot of acres or you're walking through other friends' properties and stuff, we need a way to dial in our rescue crew. So something I do is when I'm going hunting, even though people know where I am generally on this earth, I'll still throw a piece of paper in my dashboard saying like 500 yards at this azimuth. You know, a little bit of map reading like you're talking about. Just some kind of plan out there so people can find you if you get hurt or, heaven forbid, attacked.
Yeah, those are good practical things. Well, Scott, I appreciate you coming on. I know that Dillon is still going to be, he's had his first appearance. He was given a court-appointed attorney, but the actual trial will not happen for months. I'm sure it'll get continued a few times as well, especially considering that it's a felony offense. Is there anything we can do to support you? I know that you're working on a book. It hasn't been released yet. Can you tell us a little bit about it and who's it for?
Yeah, I put together a combatives manual. It's looking at police combatives as its own martial art, not just a set of techniques, but how to put stuff together, how to build your own systems, how to build team tactics and stuff like that. There's nothing specific to any one department or any one state, but you know, if I was going to make my own basic law enforcement combative section, and I'm going to have a police officer come out of that class to be my check-in. This is all the things that I want them to be able to do. I think it's techniques that every officer should be able to do. It's just basic stuff. It's not crazy things for your highlight reel or for Instagram or anything like that. It's basic skills that all police officers should be able to do. But it also, it frames it as its own martial art as opposed to just how it's taught a lot of times, and that's just a set of techniques and then they say good luck, you know, get out there and be somebody. There's a lot of emphasis on how to build your own systems, and because police officers, no matter how cool you are, you don't win by points or you know, knockout or submission or anything like that. We win by getting people into custody and going to the next call. So, you know, that's a pretty tight win parameter, and we need to be focused on that the whole time. And that's everything we do should progress us to that. And if we do stuff that deviates from that plan, then we're going to have to do more to correct to get back to it. And we're going to have to, you know, defend that in court. You're going to have to defend that in your own heart if something bad comes out of it. So this framing it like that, not only is it going to help your police recruit understand concepts to get them through their training, there's drills and exercises and stuff that officers could do, you know, before and after shift with their buddies to tighten up their own skills and tighten up their teamwork. You know, supervisors will be able to take a look at this book and have understanding of concepts that their guys are writing about. You know, there's a lot of supervisors who are old and they hurt. You know, I know you can attest to riding in that car for a long time, and the more years you pack on, the more pains you get. And those guys aren't going to the crazy combatives classes like the younger guys are going to, and they're learning these new things. So supervisors can use that as a reference. to understand what their guys are trying to explain and writing about in their use of force report. You know, police executives could use this to see where lesson plans are going. A lot of state lessons plans are well out of date, and there's a lot safer practices out there. But you know, some of these lesson plans are written by folks who haven't put cuffs on people in 20 years. You know, they're pretty out of date. So they need to get up with the times, because there's a lot of safe practices out there that aren't being taught. Yeah, the everyday martial artist can read this book and gather information to broaden their own knowledge about their specific thing, you know, because throughout time, martial arts have been developed by taking from other martial arts, but then developing techniques and tactics to fix the problem of the day or the problem of the area, whether it's adjusting to an enemy's, you know, updated armor, or changing a martial art from a wartime martial art to a sport. You know, you got to change some rules up. So right now, you know, it is written, and I'm working on fleshing out the rest of it. I don't want it to be just words and a couple pictures. It needs to be something that people will be interested in, because the material is important. You know?
It is. And one of the things that I don't think that people realize is that not many departments are fortunate enough to have use of force experts, to have their own academy, to have a dedicated training staff that's doing this. And so what I thought was really good about this book is it brings education to those smaller departments, especially. And I really loved how it explains and names, and we can get on the same page with everyone. We can say mount, we can say side control, and use those terms. And when we're writing about it, everyone knows what that means. Because I remember writing in a use of force report that I had the guy in side control, and my supervisor looking at me like I was crazy and made me take it out. And I had to write this whole thing about what side control is, instead of being able to say, you know what, I was on top and had him in side control, and then I did X, Y, and Z.
If you were on the stand, you know, defending your use of force, and you say, I did a knee on belly technique, you know, and the defense attorney says, oh, well, I trained jiu-jitsu and I use that technique. I drive my knee all the way up in their sternum to keep them from being able to breathe and stuff like that. When in reality, for police, maybe he does that in jiu-jitsu and he's that type of training partner. I don't know. But for our purposes, if we're doing something like a knee on belly, we're not trying to hurt somebody. We're trying to keep them down and control their hips. So that knee on belly is very specific. You know, it's used differently and with our specific goals in mind, and not to hurt somebody, but to keep them from getting up to hurt other people or themselves or us or whatever. You know, we're just trying to control hips to keep somebody down. But a lot of guys miss that point, and they can get railroaded with semantics and, you know, people having a little bit of knowledge from this other school, but they're not police officers. You know,
Right.
We have to be able to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, and be able to take this person into custody safely for them and safely for us. You know, because that's a huge part of our rule set, is being able to do things safely.
No, those are all good points. And you're absolutely right. That's a whole nother benefit of having a book like this. And really, when it matters, I mean, people have lost their jobs because they did not write a good use of force report, or they could not articulate why they used a certain technique, or like you were saying, they've gone to a class on how to use the technique, but their supervisor has no knowledge of that. And so there's a disconnect when that young officer is explaining to the supervisor why he did, X, Y, and Z. So, Scott, we'll talk about this more in another show, but do you have any social media anywhere where we can find you? Have you set up anything for the book yet?
No. Yeah, that's the thing, man. I'm not that big time social media guy. So
No,
I really
that's
don't have
fine.
anything set up, and I may do that when the time gets closer to putting it out, but for now, no.
All right. No, that's fine. Well, when the book does come out, we'll have you back on. That way people will be aware of the title and where they can find that out. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. If you want to support me, you can start off by liking and subscribing to Santana True Crime. You can also pick up my book,
Yeah, go to his social media.
A Murder on Campus, a Professor, the Cop, in North Carolina's Most Notorious Cold Case. I wrote that with my brother, Dr. Brian Santana. And now you can become a member of Santana True Crime for $1.95 a month. What that gets you is the episodes early. We also are going to do some member-only content to include a weekly update of the shows that we're going to have on that next week and in the future. Again, that's on YouTube only. And we've got some merch, because who doesn't like coffee mugs? And Father's Day is just around the corner. I'm sure that your loved one would love a Death Before Decaf coffee mug. You can pick that up on the YouTube merch site as well. Scott, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Good luck with the book, and good night.